Here.
Oh, look! He's an owl. Beautiful owl.
He is an owl.
Hedwig. And a very, very weird, something between a a monkey and a frog.
He looks a bit like a monkey. But there's stuff here, there's dragons and eagles. There's more.
Where?
Look, that's a goat. Is that a goat? That's a goat. Or a hairy man. No, that's a goat. I think that's because he's got horns, ears and then horns.
Oh yeah.
Welcome to the Champing Podcast. You may be thinking, and what sort of word is that? To which I answer, it is a combination of the words church and camping, and it amuses me no end. Champing is a unique concept of camping overnight in historic churches brought to the world by the brilliant Churches Conservation Trust, the national charity protecting redundant churches at risk. Over 10,000 of happy champers have stayed in their churches that are dotted all over England. So in this podcast series, we embark on our very own sleepover, but with a twist. In this episode, I travel to St Mary's Church, perched atop the isolated chalk hill of the Vale of Aylesbury, that proudly stands as a powerful monument in the Dunstable Downs countryside. We delight in the colour of the Victorian period in this episode, explore a new exhibition at the Ashmolean Museum, and discover why the Victorians were so captivated by medieval art and architecture. But not only this, the church is surrounded by both real and fantasy animals. Only a stone's throw away is Whipsnade Zoo, where they care for over 10,000 animals. St Mary's sits in this beautiful area of natural beauty, which is the Dunstable Downs. So join me as I hunt for medieval rabbit warrens, chalk lions, and fantastical creatures. Particularly bonkers is the mermaid suckling a lion and the two-headed beast with fierce claws. So let's travel back to Victorian England. Hello, Maddie.
Hello, it's lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you too. Thank you for having me.
Of course, yeah. Shall we go in and see the exhibition?
Absolutely,
Wonderful.
I'm very excited.
Oh,
it's very colourful already.
Dr.
Maddie Hewitson is exhibition researcher for the Ashmoleans' new exhibition, Colour Revolution, Victorian Art, Fashion and Design, which runs from September 2023 to February 2024. We are meeting in the hub of the exhibition space. Great, so we've just walked into a very dark and grimy London scene. So is this ultimately what the exhibition is hoping to achieve? Is it challenging and dispelling this preconception that Victorian London was very grimy and dark?
Absolutely. We wanted to start with a dark place that played up to this myth that the 19th century was indeed monochrome, grimy, industrial, polluted, and this is very much brought about by many of the things we associate with this period. So Queen Victoria, for example, goes into mourning after the death of Prince Albert in 1861, wearing black mourning clothes and never emerges. So for 60 years, she's wearing black clothing. Or you have, of course, black and white photography, which really distorts our view of the 19th century. So they may well have been wearing very colourful things, but what we see in the photographs from that period are solely black and white images. And of course, we associate the Victorian era with the great moment of industrialisation. But of course, what that brought along with it was pollution, was grimy industrial urban centres. So we've got quotes by Charles Dickens and images, black and white images by Gustave Doré showing the slums of London and just how cramped and closed these quarters were. But from this stereotypical image, we want to bring you into this world of colour and show that in fact the 19th century was this great moment for thinking about the colour, the innovations and the change in attitudes during this period.
That's amazing. And as I peep into the other gallery, I can see that we've already got this sort of blast of colour inviting you in. So should we go and have a look in?
Get to the colourful part.
So which would you say is your favourite object?
Oh, so I think we come from a kind of initial room which deals with the writer and critic John Ruskin, and he was one of the first Victorian thinkers which really asked people to think about and love colour in this whole new way. So before it had been seen as kind of secondary colour to the idea of line or design, form, and he said no, in fact, colour is a gift from God and colour is sacred in its nature. And one of the periods, the historical periods that he pointed to as evidence of this was the Middle Ages. So he said that ours, the 19th century, ours is the age of umber, theirs was the age of gold. So he saw in the preserved interiors of churches, the stained glass windows and the illuminated manuscripts, that the colours of the Middle Ages were in fact this very rich period which the artists of his day could draw on in their work. And I think a really extraordinary example of it is this illuminated manuscript page by a Scottish artist called Phoebe Anna Trequeer. So she was a contemporary artist working in around the end of the 19th century, in fact, but she was interested in reviving medieval techniques. So what we have here is 2 pages of an illuminated manuscript, so the classic kind of medieval painted book, but of her design, and what she's illuminating or illustrating is a poem by another contemporary female Victorian poet, Elizabeth Barrett Browning, and her volume, which was called Sonnets from the Portuguese. And in fact, Elizabeth Barrett Browning herself was almost kind of masquerading that she was writing this book of historical poetry that she had translated from Portuguese, but in fact what it is actually quite racy, quite romantic stuff about her relationship with her husband Robert Browning, who was also another very famous poet of the period. So the sonnet that we've illustrated here describes Elizabeth and Robert's first kiss, and so Trequeer has illustrated it with this lovely picture of a young woman and a young boy embracing, kissing underneath this amazing rainbow, and she's done this using the medieval technique of gesso, so this gold painting on the page. So it's got this wonderful sort of luminous quality, and the page itself is vellum, so animal skin, so another medieval technique that she's reviving. So it's got this wonderful range of colours inspired by the rainbow all around it, but really embracing the techniques and even the writing style, the kind of calligraphy of the medieval period as well. So something very modern mixed with something very old and historical.
It's wonderful that we're harking back to this medieval historic technique and the fact that we're experiencing it again. It's wonderful. And I mean, this enshrouding within this gorgeous gold frame really jumps out at you. It's so colourful, so vibrant, so I can see why it's one of your favourite objects, but also why it is in the exhibition. And now our conversation turns to St Mary's Church, which received a makeover in the 19th century. It received a new clock and replacement glass in the older window frames, and in 1875 a fuller programme of restoration took place. This included removing the west gallery, replacing the pews, painting walls and the rood screen, and new windows in the chancel where we can spot the handiwork of some well-known stained glass specialists such as Charles Eamer Kemp. His distinctive signature yellow wheat sheaf motif can be found at the bottom left-hand corner of the window. The south aisle and chapel were re-roofed, and a new organ was also installed. What's more, the theme of the 10 Commandments was painted on 2 thin metal sheets on the organ to match the angel wall paintings of 1867 by Daniel Bell. So I think if we travel over to St Mary's in Edlesborough, the angel wall paintings by Daniel Bell, which were part of the Victorian restoration of 1867, they can also stand as a testament, perhaps, to this era of colour that you spoke of, and especially what the exhibition speaks of. What can you tell me about the paintings?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we should remember that this, in the mid-19th century, this was the great moment of church decoration, a revival in church decoration. So figures like John Ruskin, like William Morris were looking to what survived of the Middle Ages, but then they were also looking in what ways that they could bring and restore many of these churches. So William Bell's paintings really fit into that moment of church decoration and restoration. And this also applies to many of the architects of the period. Bodley, who Bell studied with, G.E. Street, William Butterfield. So there's this whole range of architects and people interested in bringing colour into church interiors. And so, of course, painting them was one way of achieving this. You've got other churches where we see things like mosaics or 19th century stained glass, as we do in the case of St Mary's as well. But wall painting was yet another of the ways of achieving, of bringing in colour to these spaces. So a lot of people say that Bell's work very much is in the pre-Raphaelite vein. So the pre-Raphaelites always very interested in pre-Raphael, so in this kind of medieval period, so therefore it's got this kind of pre-Raphaelite style to it, but of course with this kind of religious imagery as well, so combining the kind of innovations in style and colour with those biblical stories as well to make them kind of fresh and new for church-going audiences.
And you speak of these biblical stories, but what would have motivated artists to capture these within the wall paintings?
So I think older narratives is always something that artists are interested in, and particularly interesting in some of these wall paintings is the fact that they look to Old Testament biblical stories as well as this kind of much larger piece where Christ the King at its centre as well, so drawing on maybe less familiar biblical narratives as well as some of the better known ones as well. So it's all about telling stories and how the biblical past was a very colourful moment in history as well. So there were writers at the time who would go through the Bible and pick out all the references to colour and make these kind of indexes or encyclopedias all about the colours of the Bible. So this was a real topic for thinking because there were the symbolic meanings of colour in the Bible, but also the fact that there was kind of translations of different colours from ancient languages into modern English. There were all sorts of ways into thinking about colour and its interaction with the Bible.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to going and experiencing the wall paintings later on today. So thank you so much, Maddie.
Thank you.
And if you would like to come to the exhibition, it is open until February 2024, is that right?
It is, yeah. Please do come.
The Dunstable Downs, part of the Chilterns Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty, otherwise known as AONB, offers some of the best views over the Vale of Aylesbury. The Downs command excellent views over this entire valley and onto the surrounding hills and nearby towns. They are home to more than 200 types of wildflowers and butterflies, as well as 2 ancient monuments. I have turned up today with my golden retriever Lola to see whether she can help me find some medieval rabbit warrens. Come on, Lola Bear, let's go for a walk. Do I have her treats? Yes. Do I have her poo bags? Yes, I do. Good girl. Oh! It's like fluttering all over the microphone.
Some kind of weird ASMR.
Yeah. Oh wow, it's windy, isn't it? I can hear the kites. Oh, so what I love about medieval manuscripts and the imagery is how bizarre they look through our 21st century eyes. And you can often find 15th century manuscripts showing off scenes of catching rabbits, and these rabbits are plentiful in these scenes. They're depicted also as far bigger than domestic bunnies nowadays, and even as large as hunting dogs. And in the Middle Ages, rabbits were quite a lucrative investment, and they weren't native to Britain. So the Normans reintroduced them in the 11th and 12th century and kept them in special enclosures, and their meat was a delicacy. And the fur used for trimming clothes, making each rabbit more valuable than a workman's daily wage. There were warreners who were employed to guard the rabbit warrens and feed the rabbits, and they bore burrows, and they would ward off potential predators and poachers. And today we can see these large warrens in the Dunstable Downs, and I'm standing right next to one. They are also known as pillow mounds, and these heaps of earth would have possessed multiple well-ventilated chambers where rabbits mate, give birth and raise their families. And these pillow-like mounds are often constructed in an oblong shape and sometimes connected with each other using stone-lined tunnels. And to keep the rabbits inside, a field of pillow mounds would be surrounded by a moat or ditch filled with water. A fence then provides protection against predators, and many warrens include a lodge and watchtower where the warrener resides. So I need to try and find something in the ground that replicates this. And we've spotted a chalk line and the remnants of where some medieval rabbits would have lived. But why else does this area connect to our episode's theme? Well, this area also boasts a Bronze Age cemetery, which contains several circular burial mounds. An excavated skeleton can be found at Luton Museum that was discovered in 1848 by a gentleman named William Cunnington, with evidence of cremation and grave goods including a flint arrowhead, beads made from bird bone, an ivory pin, bracelet fragment, and an amber necklace. The Victorians faced one of the greatest paradigm shifts in history. They were having revelations about time and their relationship with the earth, and natural history provided by the new sciences of geology and archaeology took them by storm. They were inundated with fossils, captivated by skeletal remains, potsherds, artefacts, and traces that served at once as relics from the past, objects in the present that could mark a time's passage. So why do you love the National Trust shop so much?
I just really like it.
And of course, we couldn't leave until we had satisfied the urge to visit the National Trust shop, where I found something unexpectedly fitting for this episode. We could get a chocolate lolly frog and then just swirl it in the... Because that was how hot chocolate was made in the 19th century, apparently. Not with chocolate frogs, but they would just get chocolate and put it in. So we could get a few of those.
Yeah.
Oh my God, they also have... Also, it works because it's an animal theme. That works, isn't it? Should I get us all one of those? We jump in the car with our chocolate treats and make our way to the church. Although, spoiler alert, I haven't brought Lola, my golden retriever, and instead have given her to my unsuspecting partner to take her home. Although her presence has been helpful for the episode, as today we will be touching upon an animal theme, hence the title. You may have guessed, fantastical beasts and where to find them. Well, we're heading to St Mary's Church in Edlesborough to find out more.
Starting route LU6 to EP.
Let's see how that goes.
Proceed to Dunstable Road, then turn left.
Oh wow, there's a chalk lion. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Gosh, I can't believe that's carved. It's so vibrant. Oh, that's lovely. Are we going into Edlesborough now?
Yeah. So we're literally coming up to there. It's there.
Oh gosh. It's really impressive.
The destination is on your right,
No, it's
LU6 to EP.
It's here. I think it's here.
Arrived.
Yeah, this is the green gate that they were on about.
Its rugged walls are built of grey Tottenham stone, quarried about 2 miles away to the northeast of Edlesborough. This soft stone weathers badly and has been patched in places with flint, brick and Roman cement. Bold, buttressed and all in battles, this venerable building has a fortress-like appearance, and its massive western tower with very distinctive pairs of belfry windows are set very well apart. It has a staircase turret in the southwestern corner, which rises above the parapet to a height of 70 feet. St Mary's very much shares its Norman identity with Dunstable Downs. We know there was a church at Edlesborough in Norman times, and Gilbert of Ghent, who, if you don't know, was the nephew of William the Conqueror, he gave the right to appoint its priests to the monks at Bardney, which is in Lincolnshire. And this right passed in 1392 to the Carthusian monks at London Charterhouse. So after the monasteries were dissolved in the 1530s by Henry VIII, the patronage passed through various hands to eventually land in the Brownlows of Ashridge, who are residing at this point in Little Gadsden in Hertfordshire, which is around 5 miles to the southeast. And the earliest parts of the present church date from the late 1200s. So I'm walking around the church, around the exterior, and it's very windy, and I'm trying not to get too mesmerised by the views. They are absolutely beautiful. All of these very gorgeous fields that are just spanning for miles and miles, and all this greenery, and I can see some livestock in the corner, and it's just wonderful. I can't really describe it. into words. It's so beautiful. But I'm going to turn my attention to the church, which is equally beautiful. And the exterior of St Mary's is covered with this perpendicular Gothic style architecture, which is from the 1400s, and it gives it much of its present appearance and character. So the craftsmen who raised the walls and re-roofed the church crowned them in embattled parapets and added 2 porches on either side. And like most medieval churches, we see styles of many different periods displayed in St Mary's. So they are generations of people from a variety of different Christian traditions that have altered, enlarged and beautified it, leaving their mark upon it. And I mean, with this sunlight shining upon this limestone, it is absolutely fresh, it's beautiful, it's reflective. It really does stand as a landmark in this whole area. It really is the church upon the hill.
Hello.
Hello,
it's beautiful.
Natasha.
It's much, I don't know why. It's huge and really beautiful. How are you?
I'm fine. How are
Good to see you.
Thank you for coming all this way.
That's all right. No, it's really fun.
And this is your son, Kit.
And this is Kit.
Natasha Podro is interpretation and digital content producer for the Ashmolean Museum and has also been working on their recent exhibition, Colour Revolution. You may recognise her surname, her father being the well-known art historian and philosopher, Michael Podro. Natasha is tall, with brown wavy hair and has a glowing smile. Her 13-year-old son, Kit, has inherited not only Natasha's height, but also her charisma and perception, something that I notice as we greet each other outside the north side of St Mary's on this gloriously bright summer's day. Great, well, should we go find the key?
I'm very happy. Yes, please.
So, Leanne, are you going to give us some clues for the key so we can get inside the church?
Don't tell me I have to climb anything.
Up the parapets.
No, it's hidden.
I'm sure listeners will appreciate that for security reasons, we can't explicitly tell you where you can find the church key. But needless to say, I witnessed great mother and son teamwork, and the key is eventually found, hidden away in a rather peculiar place. Welcome to your toilet.
Hello, toilet.
This is the toilet.
Let's hope we don't have to fish around in there.
Yeah. So Vicky and I are still trying to work out how we switch the lights on. So when we go back inside, I am going to read the instructions again because I can't remember.
This is also the prime area to introduce our second live creature of the episode. So I was a bit concerned about going to the toilet in here because there's a really big spider at the top, and I really do not like spiders.
There's several. Look at them.
Yeah.
offered to remove
God, there's
them.
quite a few big ones.
Yeah, and I'm a bit squeamish and a bit of a coward, so I'll probably wait till we go to the pub later. Now, Kit has very heroically fumbled through the spiders to find the church key. We are now ready to venture inside this magnificent building that Natasha accurately describes as very Northanger Abbey, the first of Austen's novels, completed in full in 1803. And like her main character, the young Catherine Morland, we are also spending a night in a Gothic-styled fortress.
Oh, I'm completely underdressed. I feel like I should be in a Jane Austen style frock.
Yes, where is your Jane Austen style?
Where is my
frock?
Jane Austen style frock?
Yes, and where's
a little dog colour on it.
Yeah, yes, Kit. And also, I'm looking for a pond with Mr. Darcy. After you guys.
Thank you.
Oh, brilliant. Yes, I'll grab my bags.
Isn't it beautiful?
Isn't it absolutely beautiful? That colour.
I'm just also seeing churches with wall paintings that are, I mean, they're very, very Victorian wall paintings, but they're absolutely beautiful.
No, you're right. As soon as you
Very
walk in, you
pre-rap.
sort of get a mix of medieval and Victorian, don't you, all sort of mesh together?
Yeah.
It's really grand. And in this sort of evening or early evening light dappling and sort of flowing in through these stained glass windows.
I was going to say,
gorgeous.
it's a good time to arrive because you just get the light coming through those stained glass windows. They're absolutely beautiful. The Victorians absolutely love stained glass. Creation of stained glass really takes off in the 19th century in a way that it hasn't since the Middle Ages. And The impetus seems to have come from the International Exhibition of 1862. So everybody knows about the exhibition of 1851. Crystal Palace is built especially for it. The 1862 exhibition is much less well known, and it's an exhibition that's all about colour, and it's all about new technologies and new inventions and new theories about seeing colour, but it also has lots of examples of sort of medieval themed artefacts and designs, because the Victorians love, pre-Raphaelites particularly love all things medieval. And the architect William Burgess was commissioned by the Ecclesiological Society to design this medieval court for the middle of the 1862 exhibition. And it has a huge influence. Everybody absolutely loves it. There are 6 million visitors from around the world who come to this exhibition, so it really has an impact on people's taste.
That's really interesting that you've just spoken about Burgess, and obviously he has this admiration for the 13th century and specifically French Gothic, which he applies to Chalice, Cathedral, private commissions, all of these big commissions that he's getting at the time. And he was also a great supporter of the new firm Morris, Marshall, Faulkner and Company, and those works were also displayed at the 1862 International Exhibition.
Yeah, so this is Morris, that's in William Morris, who's only just set up his own company along with the sort of pre-Raphaelite, well, they're not the original Brotherhood, but the Oxford followers of the pre-Raphaelite movement, and he's a great friend of Burne-Jones. And Morris sets up his furniture and decorative arts company in order to make things, as they would have been made, using old techniques, using old colours, using sort of reviving stained glass techniques, but also furniture making techniques, weaving techniques, and he loves all things medieval.
And I love that this is something that you've obviously been working very closely with the Ashmoleans' new exhibition that is going to be launching soon. And of course, I suppose you work a lot with, or you've been working a lot with these grand figures or these very prominent figures within this period. But there's also the firm's workmen who we need to sort of, I suppose, think about and pay homage to, because it's these people who are working in these factories, who are reviving medieval stained glass techniques in which the painting of details of sort of line and shadow and brown or black oxides were fired into these translucent coloured glass. And we can see them here, which I find absolutely stunning. We can see both a mix of these stories that are being depicted, but also this sort of green dappling light which is coming through some of these other stained glass windows. I think now it's time to find some of these stories. So it's really interesting that you're drawn to stained glass windows, and I would like to try and find a unique stained glass window dedicated to St. James the Great. And this is supposedly in the northwestern corner of the church. So let's try and get our bearings.
I don't know which way round I am.
This is the moment when I give out some clues, so Natasha and her son Kit can find this unique stained glass window dedicated to St. James the Great in the northwestern corner of the church. They are specifically looking for certain design symbols that represent him as a medieval pilgrim. And these traditional markers of a medieval pilgrim would usually include a staff, a pouch, a scallop shell, often found on their hat, and a drinking gourd. Oh, getting a bit cold down there. Kit's found it.
Hey.
You might miss it.
Oh, well done. Yeah, I wouldn't have found that. Oh, look, it's tiny. It's very sweet. I'd want to sit here. This would be my corner if I was going to be
It's
here.
a very peaceful corner.
So
it's
he's
lovely.
got this fantastic, just deep, deep red cloak.
So it's surrounded with this gorgeous green as well, isn't it? It's really vibrant and
It's somehow more colourful than the rest of them, maybe because the light's more focused.
yeah.
But I love the colours. So the pre-Rafts, the Victorians, looked at medieval illuminated manuscripts which had kept their colour, because anything on the walls of churches or anything outdoors, the colour faded under the light. And the wonderful thing about the manuscripts is you open them up and all these rich colours would be there, still really, really kind of deep and saturated. And stained glass, you can get that kind of intensity of colour. They are amazing. So he hasn't got all of his attributes. He's got the hat and he's got the scallop shell. And he's got a staff with a hook, but there's nothing actually hanging on it. He hasn't got his gourd or his pouch hanging on it. It's just a staff for carrying your stuff, your water bottle and your and your pocket. And he's St James. I don't know if you've heard of the Santiago de Compostela. It's a kind of walk in Spain, and people still do it. Pilgrims still do it, but it's a walk that people have done for centuries, ending up at the shrine of Santiago, St James. And you can do it from France, or you can do it from different places in Spain.
You may be wondering why we are looking for windows. Well, these are very special windows and of historic significance. The next one especially fits with our theme of today by being a beautiful arts and crafts style window depicting the nativity scene. It celebrates the work of two women, and it is dedicated to sculptor and painter Helen Fraser Rock, and was designed and created by stained glass artist Margaret Edith Aldrich Harrope. There is no clear reason why Helen chose to live in this area, but possibly she was seeking the peace and the solitude, the tranquility of the local countryside. When Helen died tragically in a road accident in 1932, she was buried in this very churchyard in Edlesborough. Her monument is a fine Celtic cross decorated with the Celtic knot, a decorative motif used by the arts and craft movement and also featured in her memorial window.
It's a very important window. It's the Kemp window on the south wall. So we're at the northwest point of the church now, and this is on the south wall. And the window depicts St. Peter, St. Nicholas, the Virgin and Child in a nativity scene with visiting kings and William of Waynflete, and it's made in around 1898, dedicated to the Reverend Augustus Frederick Birch, and he was the vicar of the time around the 1867 restoration of the church.
And the Nativity.
And the Nativity, which is a very important scene.
Nice to be included.
It's very, absolutely.
There we go, sheep. Bound
well
to be.
done.
Sheep and a baby.
Brilliant. Charles Eamer Kemp created it using silver stain on clear glass and a small golden wheat sheaf, which is his trademark, appearing in the lower left-hand corner. That's what we need to try and find.
Wonderful. So now, can you find his trademark?
A bunch of wheat.
Getting there. Oh, yeah, found it.
Yay, well done.
It's very small. He's really kind of discreet. It's a really discreet little signature.
It really
his little
is.
Signature emblem.
It's lovely, and it is gold, isn't it? And I think all the golden elements really come out. And I suppose this is the age of gilding everything and encrusting it with gold.
Everything was purple and then everything was gold.
Yeah. And it's so the golden keys. And what's amazing actually is the cloth of gold here. He's used a slightly kind of darker yellow to create the effect of a coat of cloth of gold, and it works beautifully.
It's very fragmented, isn't it?
Yeah,
You're right.
it's lovely.
And almost looking down on the bottom left in the nativity scene, you can see, I love the way he's done the stable wall, and it's almost like broken, and you're looking through a hole in the stable wall.
Which, although it's stylistically, it's quite modern, for the Victorians, modern. That is a trope that is used back in Renaissance art. You have these broken buildings which signify the old order, and then Christianity comes and replaces it as the new order. So you quite often get sort of broken architecture and then this beautiful, pristine, decorated new architecture around it.
Oh, beautiful. So they're sort of showing that they're enhancing this old historical building.
It's the end of, exactly. It's the end of the old world, and the New Testament is the beginning of the new world.
Brilliant, well done. Well, I think you both deserve a big cup of tea now.
I think we do.
Yeah.
Charles Eamer Kemp was arguably one of the most influential stained glass window designers of the Victorian period. His studios produced over 4,000 windows and designs for altars, furnishings, lich gates and memorials that helped to define a later 19th century Anglican style. His patrons even extended to the royal family and the wealthy beau monde of society. Kemp windows can be found in other CCT churches, including St Lawrence, Broughton and Milton Keynes.
So as we're making tea, I'd like to introduce you to our beautiful breakfast for the morning, which has been delivered in this lovely little hamper.
Oh, look, a proper hamper. You see, I need Jane Austen all over again. Jane Austen Brock is missing all over again.
Do you know, I love it.
I so wish I'd dressed up.
Each guest each week has like a new literary reference, don't they? Last week it was Wuthering Heights, and this week it's Jane Austen, so that will be the theme of our episode.
Lovely.
Isn't it nice? So we've got biscuits, we've got pastries, we've got jam, some fruit.
Very civilised.
Oh yes, we've got shortbread. Yes, did you all want some? We've got two types of biscuits. We have oat flip biscuits or shortbread. You want those ones? There we are. Oh yes, could I have some milk, please?
Whilst we're all relaxing with a cup of tea, let's look to our angelic surroundings. You may recall my conversation with Dr. Maddie Hewitson at the beginning of this episode, when we discussed Daniel Bell's wall paintings, heavily featuring angels, and that's a part of the Victorian restoration of 1867.
There were all sorts of ways into thinking about colour and its interaction with the Bible.
And I mean, when we experience these wall paintings today, they're very faded, which is such a shame. But what would the historical experience have been for when you walked into these church spaces?
Absolutely. So I think in reviving these techniques, unfortunately, Bell and others didn't always get it right. So that's why you do get a lot of deterioration in these churches. But at the time, it would have been, I think, a really sensational and overwhelming experience to come in for worship and to be confronted by these beautiful colours on the wall. And it is all about inspiring sensation, emotion. So as John Ruskin said, colour was a gift from God.
After speaking to Maddie, I started to ponder, why are angels so often depicted in these wall frescoes? We have many examples of other churches, but also the wealthy commissioning this sort of iconography that is dwelling on these medieval connections.
After the original pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood disbanded, there's a new circle sort of forms around William Morris and Burne-Jones, who met at Oxford. And they love Keats and Tennyson, particularly Tennyson poems that are set in the medieval past. But they also read a lot of genuinely medieval writers. So they read Dante and Chaucer and particularly Thomas Malory, who's the author who writes about King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table. And in 1857, actually, Rossetti gathers a group of artists, including Morris and Burne-Jones, to work with him on a series of murals for the Oxford Union. And they choose scenes from Malory of Sir Lancelot seeking the Holy Grail, and they're surrounded by angels. Unfortunately, they hadn't really got the technique of fresco painting down, so they're trying to be as authentic as possible in their technique, but they paint directly onto the whitewashed brick, and immediately the paint starts to fall off, so it deteriorates really, really badly. I'm sure it looked wonderful at the time, but it's now almost all gone. What we do have in the Ashmolean tucked away are the original designs, so we can see possibly what it did look like, but yeah, sadly they needed to work on that one. Yeah.
So it's not just reviving this technique of fresco wall painting of the medieval period, but really paying attention to the pigments that they're using to make sure that iconography and this paintwork is going to last for generations to come. And we know there's quite a lot of concern around this late Victorian period about how artists were selecting their materials, and you've just mentioned it there, that we have an example where they didn't pay that much attention. Are there any other examples or any prominent figures within this period who you can think of who were really concerned with this?
Well, both Morris and Ruskin were absolutely fixated on using natural pigments and recreating the pigments that had been used by medieval and Renaissance artists, and they laboriously made their own, which was awful, like a huge effort in a day where you can finally, for the first time, artists can just go out and buy paint in tubes. I mean, their lives are... Everybody else who's using these modern paints, their lives are made much easier, and the colours look exactly the same.
It's not just reviving this technique of fresco wall painting of the medieval period, but paying attention to the pigments that they're using to make sure their iconography and paintwork is going to last. We know there's quite a lot of concern around this late Victorian period about how artists were selecting their materials. Dr. Ter Gigo has been analysing pigments from John Ruskin's artworks, particularly his very gorgeous and colourful Kingfisher watercolour, and She's been using this very sophisticated X-ray fluorescence technology to examine the chemical elements within the pigments he was painting with. Let's cut to Taya to learn more about the science behind Victorian pigments.
My name is Sea Gigo, and I'm a research heritage scientist at the Ashmolean. I first referred to archival research, and I surveyed all the texts that Ruskin published during his life to collect his thoughts about colour and pigments. Then I started working in a scientific lab, and I used different instruments to investigate what Ruskin's colours were made of. One of the main instruments I used for this investigation is called X-ray fluorescence spectrometer. And what it does, it scans the surface of a painting and collects a response from all the chemical elements that make up colours. From that information, I can then infer what pigments Ruskin's used from those that were available on the 19th century market. It was very interesting to observe that Ruskin combined the most durable synthetic industrial pigments with the most durable traditional pigments in order to paint his watercolors. It is interesting because despite his rejection for industrialization, Ruskin very much embraced modernity and leveraged it in order to produce durable artworks.
Terrible shame.
After a full day of travelling and exploring, we are ravenous and pop down the road to the local pub around a 10-minute drive away, the Traveller's Rest. Since 1851, this pub has provided a place for travellers to rest and recuperate in Edlesborough. This pub is most likely the result of the 18th century stagecoach, which heralded essentially the rise of coaching inns that were established on strategic routes up and down and across the country.
Yeah, wow.
I'm glad I went with this.
It's good not having to make too many choices.
Now feeling like a very contented traveller, we wander back to our camp beds at St Mary's in search for rest and one last treasure hunt in our Gothic fortress.
Do you want to help me put the fairy lights on, Kit?
We are now sitting on our camp beds in the chancel and surrounded by misericords, which are warping and coming to life in this liminal time of the evening, these twinkly lights casting strange shadows. But why is this happening? Well, I have set Kit a task.
That's what the misericords
Yes,
are. I was
otherwise
wondering.
known as mercy seats.
That's a better name.
And
So you
this
were
is
supposed to stand through these long services. If you really couldn't manage, you could lean back against the seat. So that's why they were called
mercy seats to help you, to give you mercy. So I want you to, you can take my phone if you want, you've got one. And I want you to try and find as many beasts and fantastical animals and strange beings as possible.
Right.
And
So can I play?
call
I
out.
love them, is it?
Yes, have a go. Yes, please do.
Here.
Oh, look! He's an owl. Beautiful owl.
He is an owl.
Hedwig. And a very, very weird, something between a cross between a monkey and a frog.
He looks a bit like a monkey. But there's stuff here, there's dragons and eagles. There's more.
Yeah.
Look, that's a goat. Is that a goat? That's a goat. Or a hairy man. No, that's a goat. I think that's because he's got horns, ears and then horns.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, you're right.
Fantastic beasts such as these were often inspired by medieval bestiaries. In the Middle Ages, they commonly appeared in bestiaries alongside real animals like eagles, lions, badgers, and elephants. These magical animals have not faded from the literary imagination, and they appear frequently in popular culture today. So you may be very familiar with the Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling. In Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, Rowling's contemporary bestiary, the fictional author Newt Scamander writes the following, and this is dramatised by actor Anya Marie Ward.
Astounding though it may seem to many wizards, muggles, non-magical folk, have not always been ignorant of the magical and monstrous creatures that we have worked so long and hard to hide. A glance through Muggle art and literature of the Middle Ages reveals that many of the creatures they now believe to be imaginary were then known to be real. The dragon, the griffin, the unicorn, the phoenix, the centaur, these and more are represented in the Muggle works of that period, though usually with almost comical inexactitude.
If we go back to the dragon, where's the dragon? That looks like something you could watch in Harry Potter, doesn't it?
It does. It really does.
We've always loved to tell a story about a dragon. So Beowulf is one of the most famous kind of stories in English, and it's about Beowulf slaying the dragon. And,
he comes to England and he kills the monster that lives at the bottom. He swims down and kills the monster at the bottom of the swamp. But then the villagers are all still in trouble because his aunt lives, the monster's aunt, who is a witch, lives down there, and he swims down there and kills that, and then he goes off and kills the dragon.
Poor old Beowulf. Good for him.
Gosh, that is such a gruesome tale that actually, before bed, is probably a bit scary, but that we're surrounded by these bestial animals.
But the dragon is definitely my favourite. And I think Beowulf is, when Tolkien writes about Smaug, he definitely draws a lot from Beowulf's dragon. Yeah, Smaug is the dragon.
And all this talk of fire-breathing beasts reminds me of a Bodleian manuscript where there is also reference, or advice, depending on how you look at it, on how we can identify a dragon. So this comes from Bodley 764. The dragon is larger than all the rest of the serpents and than all other animals in the world. It has a crest, a small mouth, and narrow nostrils, through which it breathes, and it puts out its tongue. Its strength is not in its teeth, but its tail, and it harms more by blows than by force of impacts. And then it also gives some great advice next, which is essentially never tickle a sleeping dragon in Latin. And just before turning in for the night and jumping into our sleeping bags, we ponder upon this incredible atmospheric experience with a hot mug of hot chocolate made with a Victorian twist. And our Victorian predecessors definitely knew how to do this. They witnessed the massive rise of cocoa as one of the preferred hot beverages of the masses, and they may have enjoyed a steaming cup in a temperance-inspired cocoa house, for instance. Although today, we're making it in our own little church here.
Here, go on, put your hands in the bag and see what you can find.
It was a large spider.
A large thing of brand.
I should have known he'd be in there first.
Brand? No. Oh, it's...
What is it?
They look like ice lollies, but they've got creatures. Oh, there's more. They've got creatures on them.
But they're
That's a rabbit. That's an owl.
And there's an owl. Just like the misericord owl.
So, earlier today, we managed to find chocolate lollies in the National Trust Dunstable Downs shop with animals on them.
Oh, perfect. Let's see the others. So we've got an owl.
It's the quiet determination of everyone to...
You see his living.
Oh, actually,
that is pretty good, actually.
See, that is the 19th century way.
Yeah.
Pure chocolate.
They did something right.
Yeah. See, I think what I probably should have done was bring a camping gas and then we could have heated milk up.
Oh, that would have been nice.
But there's so much chocolate in this, it's pretty damn good. Cheers.
Cheers.
Ka-ching.
See, it's very good for you. Victorians used to prescribe it as for all sorts of ailments. I mean, it cured, according to the Victorians, it cured absolutely pretty much anything. I think it was I have a list, hang on. It was said to cure stomach problems, infections, poor liver, fatigue, I definitely need that, gout, not so much, dysentery, fevers, rashes, chest pain, kidney issues, smallpox, greying hair, and syphilis.
Syphilis?
There you go.
And I think I can have as much chocolate as I want.
No. But nice try. But you say that, I mean, there were lots of Victorian cure-alls, so there were some kind of really brutal-sounding cold water cures. If you went to Great Malvern, you were kind of given these pretty much like torture water cures, or really foul-tasting kind of quack medicines that also cured everything. If the option was to be cured by chocolate, I know which doctor I'd go to. I mean, it must have been an absolute, goldmine. Why would you not go to the doctor that sold you chocolate?
Absolutely. I bet he had many female clients.
Yeah.
Good night, everyone. Sleep tight. Are you all comfy? Waking up in St Mary's is very atmospheric. We have been sleeping in the chancel, so the oldest part of the church building, which dates back to the 13th century. Our camp beds are arranged symmetrically and surrounded by these fantastical 15th century carved seats, the misericords. It's around 6 a.m. when I wake up to bright sunlight drifting in through Kemp's stained glass window. There is a kaleidoscope of vibrant colours shimmering across the limestone and bouncing off the elaborately painted pipes of the organ. Its turquoise, red and gold pipes adding to the grandeur of this space. As I slowly creep out of the chancel, I walk down the aisle in the nave and exit through the north aisle wooden door. I have been looking forward to my early morning experience at St Mary's, and especially looking forward to looking out across those fields from this high position on the hill. It is already bathed in this warm summer light, and I can hear the local livestock and orchestra of birds as I go outside. But before I return to the group, I want to ponder upon the closing of this church and its history. And there is a rather dramatic event in this church's history. So on the 28th of March, 1824, the spire was struck by lightning, which resulted in a destructive fire which burned for 12 hours straight, fueled by molten lead. It was only skillful firefighting which saved the church during this dreadful event, and arguably the reason for its demise. The church was eventually closed in 1975, causing the parish of Edlesborough to join with that of Eaton Bray. Due to its important interior decoration, it became a new vesting with the church's Conservation Trust shortly after. Now, come on, let's head back inside and get the verdict from our fellow champers.
Is anyone else a sugar taker like me?
I love sugar.
I won't in my tea. We have some
Whip my tea
pastries. How did you both find champing?
Yeah, it was brilliant. It was sort of almost disappointingly not spooky, wouldn't you say?
It wasn't spooky, it was nice, it was quite cosy actually.
Yeah, it was with the little fairy lights and the electric candles on. It was really cosy. I think it's the highest roof I've ever slept under. And what was the best bit actually was waking up in the morning to that huge stained glass window. That was
quite
absolutely
nice.
lovely.
If you would like to make some memories, why not give champing a try? For everything you need to know about champing, please visit champing.co.uk. The champing season happens in those warmer months between March and October, so please book now. This Nights in the Nave podcast has been brought to you by the Church's Conservation Trust. It has been written and produced by me, Victoria Jenner. My guests have been Natasha Podro and her son Kit. And special thanks goes to Fiona Silk, who runs Champing, our champing assistants, and Dr. Madeline Hewitson and Dr. Teo Gigo from the Ashmolean Museum, University of Oxford. Sound recording was managed by Leanne Beattie, music by Nick Ferry, designed by George Allen, and editing by Jamie Reed. Come to a sleepover at our place